Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this Hearthstone video, I'm going to take a look at the current new and returning player decks that have been updated for Showdown in the Badlands. These decks are something that you can get for free if you're a new or returning player. So when exactly are you going to get a new deck? You complete the apprenticeship and reach Bronze 10 if you're a new player. If you're a new player, you can also skip apprenticeship and you will miss out on some of the rewards. And start at Bronze 10 and you will get the deck, but yeah, missing out on those rewards, so it's probably not worth it. If you're a returning player, you return to the game after 90 days of not logging in. It's not 90 days after you last played the game, it's 90 days of just not logging into the Hearthstone client, and you will get a deck. These decks are available multiple times, so if you're a returning player, you play some games, then you don't log in the game for 90 days, and then you will get a deck again. You get all of these decks for 1 week, then during that time you can test them, but the cards do not show up in your collection. And after that 1 week, you're forced to choose one of the decks, one of the current selection of the decks, and that one is yours to keep. All the cards are added to your collection. Obviously, some of the cards are from the core set or otherwise freely available. Uncraftable cards, you don't get additional copies of those, you don't get any dust for those. There are 6 decks that are being offered. The classes that are offered a deck can change at times, but it has been 6 decks. So let's take a look at the current selection, how good are they and which one should you choose. And first of all, we have a Death Knight deck, and this is a Plague Death Knight deck. The deck itself is not great. It's thoroughly mediocre, not legend capable, might get you to diamond, but maybe not even there. However, it does have some really sweet pieces in it, because it includes the Primus. Primus Titan goes into all Death Knight decks. All of these decks, by the way, include their class Titan. So no matter which deck you pick, you will have a Titan legendary card, which can be useful for some purposes. Primus, excellent Titan card, excellent Death Knight card, played in all Death Knight decks. Then there's Helya, and you really want to have Helya if you want to play with Plagues, because Helya shuffle all 3 Plagues into your opponent's deck. Plagues they draw this game are unending, and without that unending part, Plagues are just kind of lackluster, so you really want Helya if you want to play any kind of Plague Death Knight, so that's really sweet. It's a legendary card. And 2 copies of Chained Guardian, which is another main Plague card. Rush Reborn, epic card. It's 1 less for each Plague shuffled into enemy deck this game. Also 2 copies of Distressed Caldeer, another Plague card that's an epic. So even though this deck isn't really playable as such, it does give you foundation to build a deck that is playable. If you add the excavation cards from the current Showdown in Badlands, these decks never include cards from the latest expansion, always from the previous ones only. If you got some of the weakest stuff, like you got the Yodelers and you got the Ravenous Krakens and stuff like that, Death Growls, and you add the excavation package, then you pretty much have a meta version of Plague Death Knight, which is currently like a tier 2 deck. Not the best of decks, but definitely a playable deck. Then there is the Hunter deck, and the Hunter deck that's being offered is an Arcane Hunter with Haldron Brightwing, then also Hunter's Titan Agramar the Avenger, and Starstung Bow, the epic bow that's used in these secret Arcane Hunter decks. And this deck is almost a meta deck. This deck actually, you can play this deck out of the box and into Legend. Yes, that is possible. That's how good this deck is. Like really, this deck is only basically missing a Celestial Shot, which is a common card, which for some reason isn't included here. Like you could cut a couple of cards here, like cut 1 Cat Trick, cut 1 Kraken Bane or something, 1 Star Power, multiple options what you can cut, but cut 2 cards, add 2 Celestial Shots and boom. That's really legend capable deck right there. So performance wise, this is the best deck that you can pick. And value wise, it has 2 legendary cards and 2 epics, which is on the low side. This is the least valuable out of these decks. So that is of course a little bit of a bummer, but on the other hand, most of these decks only do give you 2 legendary cards. The ones that have more legendary cards, usually the one is a corset card or an uncraftable or something, so that it's not really a legendary card. But some of them do give you more epics. But if you want to play Hunter, then this is a deck, and this is a really good deck. Then there's the Paladin deck, and Paladin is currently the best class in the game. But not with these cards. This deck is total nonsense. I don't even know what's going on with this deck. I mean, in the description it says about those huge golems, but they have forgotten all of the Earth and Synergy cards from this deck. So I don't even know what's... I just don't know. Amethos Titan, probably one of the weaker Titans. It does go really well into some kind of token strategies, but not used in all Paladin decks. Then there's the Countess, which is kind of a fine pure Paladin card, but yeah, only for pure Paladin. Then there's Tyr, which is kind of unplayable. So this deck actually does give you 3 legendary cards, although there's only 1 epic. But the quality of those cards leaves something to be desired, given that one of them is pretty unplayable outside of specifically Earthen Paladin. And this doesn't even give you the Earthen cards, and this doesn't give you a lot of those tools. This doesn't include most of the expensive tools of current Paladin meta decks. They require like 3 legendaries, 2 or 4 epics on top of this stuff, so I just don't like this at all, even though Paladin is a great class. Then there's the Shaman deck, and the Shaman deck is also pretty bad. This is some kind of nature shaman, doesn't see any play above bronze. It does include Golganet, which is a fine Titan. It includes Yogg-Saron Unleashed, which is nowadays after the nerf, I guess, a below mediocre Titan. But the Shaman decks are currently being played are Highlander Shamans. Yeah, you can grab 1 copy of most of these cards and put into that deck, but they're still missing the Highlander synergy cards, like Reno and the Shaman Legendary, the Holiday. So missing those legendary cards means that you can't really build a Highlander deck out of this. This deck as such is not great. So value also, value-wise it's, well, it does have some epics, but there's very little use value in these cards, so not great at all. Then there is the Warlock deck, and the Warlock deck actually gives you most value, because this deck includes 3 real legendary cards, with Sargeras the Destroyer, an absolute top tier Titan, Symphony of Sins, another top tier legendary card, and Thaddius Monstrosity, a little bit more niche, goes specifically into Thaddius Warlock mostly, even though it's a neutral card, but still it's a very powerful card. It's one of the cornerstone cards of Thaddius Warlock, as you might guess by the name of the deck. So 3 legendary cards, 2 Amorphous Slimes, excellent cards for Thaddius Warlock, 1 Shallow Grave, kind of optional, but yeah, this one is really valuable. It's almost good, but not quite good. You can climb a little bit of ladder with this, but it really suffers that it has different reanimators, which can reanimate your undead minions when they die. And yeah, you have Thaddius, you have the Flesh Behemoths, but you don't have Dark and Dratir. And Dark and Dratir is pretty much mandatory in this archetype. You would also love to have Loken, so there's a couple of legendary cards that are missing from this archetype, but especially that Darken. Without Darken, the deck itself is quite incomplete. It's playable, but it's not great, but the value is awesome, so this gives you a lot of building blocks. If you can just craft some cards in addition to this, especially that Dark and Dratir, you can make this work, and that would be one way to climb the ladder and get a lot of value out of your free deck. An excellent choice overall. And finally, we have a Control Warrior deck, an Armor Warrior, but Armor Warrior has not been good in Showdown in the Badlands at all. So yeah, Odin Prime Designate, it's what Control Warrior decks are built around nowadays, so it's really important for them. Yogg-Saron sometimes sees play, sometimes not after the nerf. This deck does give you the entire Rift package. Rifts are very synergistic cards. You want to have them all if you have them, if you play them. So Bridge Rift being an epic, it's not always easy to get them, so you get that package. Okay, but it's mostly only used in Control Warrior, and Control Warrior is not great. Enrage Warrior is the better warrior deck at the moment, and for Enrage Warrior, well, you get Trial by Fire. 2 copies of Trial by Fire, that's still 2 epics for that list, but none of the legendaries, none of the other good stuff, so a little bit disappointing overall. So all of this means that my top 3 decks to pick out of these, you can pick this in any order depending on what you really value, would be Warlock, because very close to being playable, a lot of value, just a great pick. Then there's Hunter. Hunter is the best out of the box. This is a legend capable deck already right here, and you can add 2 common cards and then it's even more legend capable deck, so unparalleled performance among these decks. Value a little bit on the low side, but hey, it's still 2 playable legendary cards and 2 playable epic cards, that's nothing to complain about. And the third one would be Death Knight, because Death Knight, this list, again, not that playable, needs some more changes because you need to add the excavation package, but you get some really sweet cards. Primus, Helia, Chained Guardians, Distress Qualdir. If you like to play this Plague Death Knight playstyle, you shuffle those plagues into the opponent's deck and they are afraid of drawing cards, then yeah, this gives you all the tools to get started with that. Gives you a bunch of value, so another great choice. So these 3 decks, the Warlock, the Hunter, and the Death Knight, are above the other 3. So my choice would be one of these 3. I wouldn't want to pick the others. But overall, not a bad set of decks. One legend capable deck out of the box this time. Sometimes there have been more, sometimes there have been none. So that seems quite alright. And I hope this video has helped you to make your decision and pick the deck that fits you the best. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.